Welcome back to Bat Fridays here on One Comic Book Day, where we're covering Detective Comics 78, The Bond Wagon. A propaganda piece that, once again, for Batman, really fun and entertaining. All I really want from Golden Age stories, because they're not going to give me the kind of stories I want, particularly that go in depth on character or have character arcs. So this one technically has character arcs, and we'll get to that in a second. There are a lot of caveats and a lot of problems with this comic. It should come with some sort of warning beforehand. And these stuff drags down when I'm talking about Superman comics, because Superman comics sort of forget the fun. Batman has managed to, in the Golden Age, have its action, but make it something they play with that's fun to read. It's interesting to read. You want to see what happens next, and I love what they do with the concepts. So even with some racism and some just truly terrible understanding of PTSD, which ends up being my biggest problem with this comic, I'm going to say I enjoyed it because I did have fun reading it. And this is something I can accept for the era it was written and the constraints it was writing under. Superman doesn't seem to enjoy actually Superman using his powers. I need to get that across. It spends maybe 2 or 3 pages of him rushing in and dealing with it in the least dynamic way possible most of the time. But here, Sheldon Moldoff seems to actually want to depict Batman, trying and stuff that kids could sort of recreate, and just some amazing little poses and fight scenes that go on for more than a page. I don't know how many ways I can possibly say I enjoy reading what they give me. And Batman's already had a pretty good propaganda piece earlier on with a story that showed 2 depictions of the future, one where the Nazis win, one where the Nazis lose. And in fact, we're actually using Nazis in 1943. Superman tried to dance around that with the Duclians and the Fourth Column, who were never specifically Nazis, until he eventually did deal with Hitler in a way. I mean, he did in a non-DC comic, but in the DC comics, he didn't deal directly with Hitler until much later, and it was essentially magical imps that got rid of him. I forget what their names were. The Gremlins were the side that fought for Superman in that story. And then he took out a different Hitler, who was depicted as Hitler, but was not named Hitler. So here, in an absolutely ridiculous opening, Dick Grayson is studying the Revolutionary War and complaining about modern Americans whining about having to pinch and save for the war effort and how bad things were for people who lived in the Revolutionary War, which is like comparing apples and oranges. But I like the flavor of oranges, but rather eat apples. So what do I know about comparing apples and oranges? It's just a really wrong-headed way to go in here. But him and Bruce decide that, hey, the Revolutionary War heroes and their stories can inspire people to do the actual sacrifice by buying some damn war bonds. So yes, it's a story convincing you to buy war bonds. This is all what this story is. Buy some war bonds. There, we've effectively covered the story. Batman sends out a casting call to cast members of the Revolutionary War, and they're going to reenact it across the country in their war bond wagon, where admission to get into these elaborate reenactments involves buying a war bond. Not a bad idea. Logically, it probably would have made more sense for Bruce to be doing this. How does Batman have this money? But it's fine. We need Batman and Robin in the story. Doesn't matter, it's the Golden Age. What logic is there? I'm just saying he's maybe allowing people to ask some questions about Batman's financial means that he doesn't want people to put 2 and 2 together there. So we're going to have recreations of the war, but there has to be some sort of conflict. And that is where we get Baron von Luger. Yes, let's appreciate that name. They are cartoon Nazis, and they are legitimately Nazis trying to sabotage this effort to help the Führer. And man, it's just fun to watch Batman punch up some Nazis, including them dressing up like the Haitians to attack George Washington as he crosses the Delaware. I mean, I can't get through it without laughing and with a smile on my face. That's how much I enjoy that idea. And then there's crazy things like Robin warning Batman about the Nazis by using Morse code by throwing logs into the fireplace, which I don't even know how he's doing, but it's still fantastic. There is also attempts at more of a character arc and plotting for the story. Maybe it could have done better in later years, but hey, once again, fun. And this is where I get to my biggest complaint. I also have another complaint that This is a very overwritten comic with panels almost entrenched in dialogue. But hey, the dialogue's ridiculous and sort of within the writing of the 66 show, so it's good and bad. I enjoy silliness. Come on, give me the silliness. It's better than being boring. So there's two guys who are hired. Both have a unpleasant backstory. One is a guy literally named Arnold who was framed or misunderstood as taking a bribe to throw a football game and has had his career ruined. Batman decides not to hire him as Benedict Arnold because, well, he's trying to help him. And that would just be a bad comparison, but they do try that comparison. And the other is a former Navy captain who, after getting his ship destroyed in the war, is, as they put it, gun shock, like shell shock. He's suffering from PTSD, and they will not allow him to captain a ship, and he feels shame for that. So Batman's going to let him be John Paul Jones, recreating one of the moments from the Revolutionary War with his own sort of clipper ship. And from that moment, I was very worried that we were going to essentially fix his PTSD, which I know what kind of story this is, but PTSD is not something you fix. It's something you find to live with and deal with. You don't fix it. And, well, that's what happens here. But in the moment, we do get a wonderful clipper ship versus a Nazi submarine. And once again, if you don't think that's fun, I don't know how to help you. Which mainly gets defeated because, A, they won't go underwater and shoot torpedoes at it, which is the obvious way you do this. And this allows Batman and Robin to just get on top of the submarine and beat the crap out of them. And this doesn't take a page. It takes several pages of telling this part of the story, which then leads to a more truncated, not only him, but the Benedict Arnold kind of guy, which the Nazis assume that they can just pay him off because, well, he got payoff before, which is not true. And he goes along with it, trying to defeat it until Batman and Robin show up and finally take out Baron von Luger. I want him to come back. It's just an amazing name, Baron von Luger. He kind of looks like a Nazi Lex Luthor, which isn't too far off from how Luthor was originally introduced. And they defeat him. And Batman gives a passionate appeal to us about buying war bonds at the end, which is fascinating because, well, technically these comics are written for children, and children can't really buy war bonds unless they want to use their allowance to that. Guess that would be the patriotic thing to do, probably trying to get their parents to do it. And we all know that adults were reading these, and they were being sent into the war effort, and I'm sure this was very fun for several soldiers to read. But it sort of accepts the silliness of this notion and just goes along with it. And as long as I'm having fun, I am fine with the problems of the era. Though I will point out one poorly worded sentence of mentioning Robin had Indian stealth. So yeah, there's some racism in here too. There's a lot to like over the obvious problems. And all of that can be forgiven as long as you get me a rip-rockin' story. That is it from Detective Comics, The Bond Wagon. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notifications when a new video goes up. I do this Monday through Friday. But Mondays and Thursdays, I cover a Superman or Superboy story in, well, those titled comics or their adventure or action comics stories. Join us next week. Same Bat Day, same comic book channel. Have a good day.